Welcome to the Undercovers football podcast. I'm Ben along with Connor and Paul. And as you can see in Connor's little name bubble, playoff mode is officially activated. I hope just everyone had a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. They're able to, spend some great time with their family. That's why we took a little bit of a break also because the Bills pretty much already had everything meaningful locked up anyway, so there really wasn't a lot to talk about other than, what backups are going to play in the New England game or whatever. And I guess just potential playoff matchups, but obviously we don't really know anything until the games are finalized. All the games are finalized. The brackets are set, and here we are ready to talk some playoff football.
2 points if anybody gets the playoff mode activated reference to the letter.
Oh, I do
Don't
not.
ask me for any references. I'm
Ben,
bad
the
at
fact that
references.
you, of all people, don't know is actually kind of interesting. That is a quote from LeBron James when the Los Angeles Lakers were on the edge of the playoff contention sphere a few years back. He uttered the words playoff mode activated, and yeah, it's kind of been one of those things that people remember him for saying.
Well, that's an L on me. The only real LeBron James thing I remember is when they're down 3-1 to Golden State, and then he wore the sunglasses and headphones. That infamous pic that people still use
Yep.
to this day, which is classic. But let's get into it right now with our quick takes. And my quick take is obviously going to be a fun one. I guess it's not really fun depending on the circumstances, but if the Bills, I'm not saying they will, but if they were to lose Sunday, should Sean McDermott be on the hot seat and should they consider moving on from him? I would say yes at that point because you got a better roster than Denver. This is now the third straight season you lost at home in the playoffs, and I get it. There's still some holes, whatnot, but this is probably the healthiest the Bills have been going into the playoffs since the 2020 season, which was their only AFC Championship run in the Josh Allen era. And if they are able to beat a rookie Bo Nix, I think they might want to just have a change of voice. And I know Joe Brady is a hot coaching candidate. Now that there are 6 head coaching vacancies, Joe Brady's name has been near the top of all of those. I think he already has 4 interviews scheduled, so he's been quite the hot commodity for teams needing a head coach. And that the Bills don't want to lose him, the best way to keep him would be to give him that job promotion. Maybe McDermott transitions into the front office, something we've seen recently from other coaches, such as Bruce Arians when he stepped down and Todd Bowles ended up taking over. And I mean, Tampa is still kind of rolling without Arians. They're now their 4th straight playoff appearance. I believe this is their 3rd division title under Todd Bowles. So, yeah, they haven't had the best record, but they're still able to win their division. And I think even with Joe Brady, there's enough talent on the Bills roster where they should win the division. They may not have the regular season success, but to me, this really just relies on in the playoffs, just maybe taking a little different approach on some things. Maybe Brady has some new ideas. And I think also part of the Bills' downfall is their defensive philosophy. And yes, I know Bobby Babich is calling the plays, but I don't really think his style is that different than McDermott. I think McDermott still has a final say so. So my idea is to now this is if the Bills were to lose in the first round, possibly second round, but second round, I still think they'll probably keep McDermott. But if they lose in the first round, I think they should have some serious discussions on just promoting Joe Brady. And there's some solid defensive coordinator options available, including Robert Saleh, but one who's actually shown that he can kind of shut down this Kansas City offense and have some type of game plan for Mahomes was just made available, formerly of the Cincinnati Bengals, and Lou Anarumo. And I think the Bengals' biggest downfall on defense was they just lost a lot of talent on that defense, including Jesse Bates. Their corners aren't the best right now. So I think if the Bills were to make a move, I think your best choice is keeping Joe Brady, just so they don't do anything on offense, because the offense, even with not the best pieces around Allen outside of James Cook in the offensive line, they're still doing their thing. So I think it's something they should consider. I don't know about you guys, but that's my my quick take.
That's an interesting quick take. The only thing I'd actually want to bring up, Ben, is that if you did actually fire Sean McDermott, who would you replace him with? Out of every candidate that could be potentially a head coach next season, who would your first idea for a replacement be?
Joe Brady was my first idea. Second would be Ben Johnson, but that would require the offense to change a little bit. But I do think we have the backs that would fit a Ben Johnson style offense, where Ray Davis can play the Montgomery role. You have James Cook to play the Gibbs role, and then whoever wants to be the Laporta role, whether it's Kincaid or Knox, maybe he wants to rotate tight ends. I mean, I don't think he might be as talented, but I think if he was to utilize Shakir kind of how he utilizes St. Brown, I think Shakir's numbers can increase. The only real missing piece would be to get a Jameson Williams type, but
all right,
there are some interesting free agent names. And I mean, obviously, if depending if they do make any type of move or when free agency starts, we'll get to that bridge when we cross it. But I mean, just for now, just for starters, those are my top two candidates. I would just like to keep the offense the same, just because this was actually one of the better offenses in the Josh Allen era, including team history, honestly. So I think they should really give Joe Brady a serious look. And now that's if they don't reach the AFC Championship game or Super Bowl, because if you reach the AFC Championship game, I think that does show some improvement from the last couple of seasons. Then you would just have to, I think Bean would just have to go out and really make it a point of emphasis to fix the defense, because that's what I'm assuming would be the ultimate downfall, and that's typically the Ben the Bills downfall. But we do have a decent amount of draft capital. This is supposed to be a stronger defensive draft class. So I think anything, even with a divisional loss, I would consider it, but I don't know if Terry Pegula would consider it with a divisional loss, but it would be 3 straight years losing at home in the divisional round, which I think is a bit of a red flag to me.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, yeah, you're not wrong whatsoever, but I'm definitely on board the don't fire McDermott, whatever happens train, but I definitely like hearing the other side of it.
Okay, but even if so, say they lose to Denver and they come out and are totally outplayed and it looks like they aren't prepared to play, are you still keeping McDermott?
I'm questioning the idea, but I
Okay.
will not say off the top fire him, because I am not someone that will willingly say immediately fire a coach. I've only ever made one exception in my entire life, and it isn't even related to football. It was related to basketball. It was Indiana Fever coach Christy Sides. She should have been fired a long time before she was, but that's not the point. That's the only time I've ever advocated for a coach being fired very quickly.
So just before we move on to our other quick take, because I just saw this pop up on my Twitter feed. Speaking of LeBron, he had a crazy windmill dunk. You guys might want to check it out, either now or later. But let's get into your quick take, Connor.
All right. Is it it's the same one, right? Let's see.
I got it.
It would be the one that I was originally going to do.
Yeah. So with the bracket all set, with all the teams in place, it could turn into an interesting weekend filled possibly with upsets. So Connor, which team do you think has the biggest chance to be upset this weekend?
That's a good one. That's a really good one because there's a lot of really interesting options, but I feel like the one that everybody in these circles is talking about, I feel like if you're going to see an upset, you're going to probably see one of 3 potential upsets, but there's one that I think not many people are actually really talking about. Now, you guys correct me if I'm wrong. Haven't been on Twitter in a couple of days. The Packers upsetting the Eagles seems like a very interesting take. And I feel like if the Packers can control the ground game with Josh Jacobs and keep the Eagles offense off the field, keep Saquon Barkley off the field as long as possible, I feel like the Packers actually might stand a nice chance to upset Philadelphia and move on to the second round. The only question really is Jordan Love, if he's going to be, 100% going into that game. If I know Christian Watson, I think he's probably already going to be ruled out. I haven't seen anything regarding him lately, but I know the injury in week 18 was definitely not pretty. So I'm assuming that he's going to probably be out for this game, which definitely doesn't help Green
Who,
Bay's pass
Christian
attack.
Watson?
Yeah, Christian Watson.
I think he tear his ACL.
Yeah, he tore
if I'm not
his ACL,
mistaken.
so he's
Oh, it was the ACL? Okay, then yeah, he's definitely out. Like 100%
Now
out.
the big question is on Jalen Hurts' availability because he still has not cleared concussion protocol.
Mm-hmm.
No, he's
That's
not.
a big one too. Yeah, if they can't play, if Jalen Hurts can't play, then I think that take goes from hot to pretty reasonable. So let's just say hypothetically he doesn't play. This take doesn't really, it doesn't stay as hot. It just goes back to a more reasonable style of take. I see a lot of people talking about how the Steelers can upset the Ravens. I would love it, but Mike Tomlin's playoff record is absolutely atrocious. He has not won a playoff game since 2016. And in those 2 playoff games he won, one of those was on field goals only against the Kansas City Chiefs. That was the divisional round.
Yeah, I'm not really buying any type of Steelers
Not
hype
either.
going into the playoffs as much
I'm
as
not
I
either.
would like them to upset Baltimore. But
Yeah.
Wouldn't we all? But no way.
Let's move on now to our Bill. I believe it's our Bills topic time.
The actual good stuff.
The good stuff. I mean, Bills and Broncos this weekend. Here are your two possible scenarios for the divisional round if the Bills would go on. If the Bills win, Ravens win, obviously the Bills would host the Ravens. Bills win, Steelers win, the Bills would host the winner of Houston and LA. Our first topic goes back to Sean McDermott. What is your guys' trust
did you
level?
say the Bills? You meant the Bills. So did you mean the Bills win? Oh, Bills win and Steelers win.
Yeah, the Bills and the Bills win, Steelers win, the Bills will host the winner of Houston and LA.
Yep.
So the first topic goes back to the Sean McDermott talk, but this is more of a more positive way. What is your trust level in Sean McDermott heading into the postseason?
This is going to be interesting because I can already tell there's going to be 2 different answers here.
There might be 3 different answers.
There probably is 3 different answers, but let's hear yours first, Ben. You're the traditional McDermott critic, so I want to hear it.
Yeah,
I think there's 2 McDermott critics here, and then one just.
So I'll just go off of the last 4 or 5 years in Buffalo with Sean McDermott. Obviously Josh Allen's first year, we blew that big lead. Our first playoff appearance, we blew that big lead in Houston. Then obviously you have 13 seconds. Last year's divisional round, which I think more or less was on some players not making key plays at the right time and defensive injuries. But then you go back to the Cincinnati game where the team just pretty much did not show up from the get-go. You had Matt Milano saying after the game they had no energy going into the game, during the week of practice. So I lean on the side of cautious, but hopefully optimistic because the team is still, I think this looks like a different Bills team, but you still have Baltimore led by a two-headed monster, potentially three-headed monster, depending on how Keaton Mitchell is utilized out of the backfield. That's been one of the Bills' biggest Achilles heel all season is stopping the run. They've shown signs of improving in that department recently, but until they show they can do it against Derrick Henry, I'm still going to be a little nervous about that. And then number two, if they are able to get past the divisional round and they meet Kansas City, McDermott has still yet to beat the Chiefs when it actually matters. So he has to prove that he can do that for me to really feel confident in him. I would say I'm more confident than I normally am in him, but I am also a little bit nervous just because of what he has shown in the past.
I don't disagree.
I don't disagree either.
Here's my thing. I feel like this is probably the most confident I felt in McDermott heading into the postseason because one, we have the healthiest team since probably the 2021 season. I mean, even though it's annoying that he takes this conservative approach in the regular season to rest players and to make sure they're fully healthy before returning back to the field, it's what is that those are the decisions that are correct by Sean McDermott. And it's a reason why the Bills have the healthiest team heading into the postseason since the 2021 season, because he takes that approach with injuries. And aside of that, he has Josh Allen, who just looked like a complete MVP level quarterback all year from the start of the season to the end of the season. But really, he's just looked confident all season in every decision he is making, whether it's, challenging, whether it's his coaching decisions. He had a few coaching blunders throughout the season. Every coach gets one or two of those a season. But besides that, Sean McDermott has been consistently good this season from, coaching all the way down to the even small little management parts of his job of resting players and calling people up when he needs to, switching when the safeties went down. When we had one standing safety left, he made the right decisions, with Cam Lewis and Cole Bishop to really organize that defense so it was good enough to beat the Detroit Lions, who would go on to be the 1 seed in the NFC. So I'm confident in Sean McDermott, but again, back to Ben, what he said, you still have to have it in your mind of the history of what has happened when the calendar has turned from regular season to postseason. And is he going to show that he can be a postseason coach instead of a regular season head coach?
For real. He's basically going to have to prove that he's not about to turn into another Mike Tomlin when it comes to the postseason. But with this roster, with how the overall vibe of the team, the culture just feels absolutely perfect this year. With how, even in McDermott's I don't know if you guys saw his last comments, but how McDermott was emotionally moved about trying to get a Super Bowl to Buffalo.
Yep.
I feel like he's in it this year. Like he's really, like his heart's in it. It's just got to be, is your heart in it and is your mind in it? Because I'm very confident that he can make the right decision, at least to beat Denver. I mean, it's not a team that we should overlook by any means, because the minute you overlook a team, you're going to lose. So you have to game plan well for Denver. They have a very, very underrated defense, especially the rush defense. Their running defense is actually really good, and not many people talk about it because the Broncos went 10-7. So I think that, it's definitely a good gauge to see how well McDermott can prepare by this game that everybody says is going to be a gimme for the Buffalo Bills. No playoff game is ever a gimme. You have to go earn it. And I think McDermott will be able to go out and earn it with the roster, with everything else that's been, established. And this team's finally healthy for once in the playoffs. Like, we're going to see a fully healthy Matt Milano in the playoffs, or mostly healthy Matt Milano in the playoffs. We're going to see Terrell Bernard with him in the playoffs. We're going to see Taron Johnson healthy in the playoffs. We're going to see so many healthy players in the playoffs for once that it feels like this just has to be different. Like, the vibes are right. The injuries are minimal. You're the 2 seed. Vibes are right. Go get it. Go win.
Now, one thing we've talked about being an area of concern over the course of this season on the show is the Bills' defensive line. Is that good enough for them to sustain a long playoff run? And it's, we've kind of seen it be dominant at times, including the Detroit game where Ed Oliver was feasting on the Detroit O-line, which is very good. But there's other times where it's been completely bullied. And I just want to give a shout out to Eric Turner from Cover One because he's been posting some great content. But Denver likes to pull their guards a lot, and I believe it's Powers, who's their guard, has been wrecking guys. So if the Denver D line plays like it has, and the Bills D line has played like it has, that could be a recipe for disaster. Now, the edge rushers have been good at times. Rousseau has gotten a ton of pressures this season. It hasn't always led to sacks, but even Von Miller, has had 6 sacks despite missing 4 games and basically being a rotational defensive end. I would love to say AJ Epinesa has been great, but he's been a little disappointing at times. I lean no on this, unfortunately, and I think if the Bills are to go home early, it's going to be mainly because of their issues at the defensive line. On paper, they should have the talent to have a great defensive line, but we all know that Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones have been severely underperforming this season, specifically Daquan Jones. So I think the Bills' defensive line needs massive improvement. And going into the offseason, depending on how the season ends, that should be one of Brandon Beane's number one priorities is rebuilding this defensive line. He's already successfully did that with the O-line, which, was an issue in the past. That Cincinnati playoff game severely exposed the O-line issues, and now the O-line has turned around to being one of the top units in the entire league. So if he can do what he did with the O-line on the defensive line, then the Bills are serious contenders. But right now, as currently constructed, I'm a little wary of how that defensive line has looked at times.
Denver's offensive line is going to be a difficult task for the Bills' defensive line because of how good that offensive line is. They have 5 offensive linemen, the top 5 in interior offensive line and interior offensive line win rates and win rates and win rates in the pass blocking and run blocking. From the interior offensive line to the exterior offensive line, it's just really good. It's really good, just flat out really good. Broncos rank first in pass block win rate and run block win rate. So if there's a area for these for the Broncos media, for the Broncos fans at home watching this game where they're hoping for a 7-2 upset, that's where it's going to be. The upset's going to happen. It's going to be, if can the Bills get through that stone wall of an offensive line of Denver? If not, Bo Nix would probably just sit there the entire game with very little pressure and just throw dots. And that would just turn into a Josh Allen Bo Nix shootout 1 o'clock on CBS on Sunday. So the Bills D line, I'm nervous, but I think they've shown enough to me to feel somewhat confident in them heading into this postseason. Like, even they haven't been consistent, they've shown that they've been able to get through some of these tough offensive lines and just generate pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a game where you might not need to sack Bo Nix 6 times to win the football game. You might just need to pressure him 6, 7, 8 times to get inside his head. And we all know Sean McDermott's record against rookie quarterbacks. That's another thing entering into this game. McDermott knows how to scheme against these rookie quarterbacks. And yes, the offensive line of Denver is really good. But all you have to do is just get inside Bo Nix's head just a little bit, and I think you should be okay. But then it brings back to Bo Nix is 25 years old, and he played 5 years of college football. So it's a very different Sean McDermott versus rookie feel here.
Freaking super senior in college out here. But no, you absolutely said it, that very last bit, though. It's still a rookie quarterback playing against Sean McDermott. Rookie quarterbacks do not generally play very well in their first playoff game. Look at what happened with Lamar Jackson when he was a rookie in his first playoff game. 5 turnovers. 5. And all 5, I'm pretty certain, were fumbles against the Los Angeles, no, that was when they were the Los Angeles Chargers at that point. That was back in 2018. Yeah, they had 5 turnovers. All of them were Lamar Jackson fumbles. Look at what happened with CJ Stroud's really the only one that's done even remotely well as a rookie in the playoffs. Most of them just shatter immediately when they get under the bright lights. So it's going to come down to whether Bo Nix can actually handle the pressure of being in a playoff game.
Well, my only counter to that is Bo Nix has like 20 years of experience as a starter because of how long he was in college.
That is valid.
So he's not your typical rookie. So, I mean, you've seen a lot, from Auburn to Oregon as far as different defensive looks. And he's got
he only had a 2-game slump this year. I mean, after those 2 games, I mean, he's toe for toe for touchdowns with like Patrick Mahomes and everyone after like week 2 or something like that.
Yep, and
wild.
He's got a great play caller and coach in Sean Payton. Now let's get into our matchups to watch in that game. And for me, it's going to be how these Bills linebackers play in space, because we know the Denver offense relies a lot on wide receiver screens, short passes. Bo Nix doesn't typically take a lot of deep shots. I mean, he does sometimes later in games once they've kind of already been working the defense a little bit, scheming stuff up to open up the downfield passes. And given that Denver has a couple of shifty weapons between Marvin Mims, Devon Vale, and Julio McLaughlin, this is going to be a big point of emphasis for me in this game is how can the Bills cornerbacks, linebackers, everyone tackle these Denver weapons in space, because the Bills defense plays bend, don't break. But I think that kind of plays into how Sean Payton likes to call his offense with Bo Nix. So like you mentioned, Connor, getting Bo Nix to make some mistakes is going to be critical, because if he plays relatively a clean game, that is not good news for the Bills, in my opinion. I think the game will be a lot closer in that scenario. So the Bills need to do whatever they can to get Bo Nix under pressure, force him to make some errant throws. I think that it's going to be big, just creating turnovers. If they could just march down the field and, score on this defense, and if we're unable to get them in consistent 3rd and longs, which has been an issue for our defense, I think that can spell some trouble for the Bills.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, we've got to – you absolutely said it too. Tackling in open space, like, for God's sakes, if you can't tackle in open space, what are you doing? Like, you've got to be able to find a way to make the open man tackle, especially if for whatever reason you have a break in coverage. You got a guy wide open like 20 yards downfield and there's only one guy that could save that touchdown, I hope he can tackle in the open field. Because if he can't, you just gave up 7 points or you gave up 6 points. Lord have mercy if the kicker misses that extra point. Anyway, I actually think another very interesting area to watch in this game is going to be how the Bills' running game does against a very underrated run defense. They're probably going to be looking for James Cook to get very active out of the backfield. So, what I was thinking, what I've seen a few others actually also say, is that we need to try to open up our screen game a little bit with, quick screens to James Cook, Ty Johnson, Ray Davis. Let them eat in that regard just to keep Denver's defense on their toes. That way they're not constantly expecting Cook to go right up the middle or, a short little pass to, either Ty Johnson or Ray Davis or like a little toss or, heaven forbid, one of those weird looking option plays where Allen takes the snap and runs directly with his offensive line with the running back, whoever it is, right behind him. And you're just like, okay, is Josh going to get 1 yard, 2 yards here? It's just some very weird option plays. But at the end of the day, that will be something to watch because I feel like if the Bills' run game can have a solid show against Denver's run defense, I feel like we are going to be in great shape with regards to being able to impose our will in the run game on anybody else we see in the playoffs. Granted, the Chiefs have a really good defense. The Ravens, they've got a pretty good defense. And let's be completely honest, we have to be able to hold Bo Nix at least, keep him in check, especially considering the other playoff quarterbacks we will most likely have to face. If we beat Bo Nix, it'll most likely beat Lamar Jackson next on the docket. Granted, the Steelers don't find a way to shock the world and upset them, which I think we were going to talk about that later on in the show, right, Paul?
I mean, we can definitely bring it up during game picks as we go through.
Yeah,
game
we'll
picks
have
later
to
on.
because that's very important, especially on the AFC side regarding next potential opponents.
But
go ahead, Paul.
I was about to get my matchup to watch, but do you have something to say?
Speak it.
No, speak it.
My biggest, my matchup to watch here today for this week's game is, it literally just flip it from the Bills D line against the Bills Broncos offensive line, Bills offensive line versus the Broncos defensive line. I think, this is the Broncos, even though they're 10-7, this is a very underrated 10-7 Broncos team. Like, they have weapons on offense. They have really good defensive players. I mean, if you look at this matchup, Bills Broncos, there's areas where just this game just evens out and just can't, and every weapon and every defensive weapon just cancels each other out, and it just might turn into like one of those games where it's going to be one play that opens up the game for one of these two teams, and that could happen with the Bills offensive line against the Broncos defensive line. How the Broncos generate pressure. They have 20, I believe the number is 26 sacks this season. Denver's defense has. The Bills offensive line doesn't allow sacks, but this could creep into a game where if the Bills offensive line at certain points in times in critical moments where they get down to 2nd and 20, it's 3rd and 13 where the pressure is going to come, would the Bills offensive line be able to stop that pressure and be able to convert a 3rd and long when most needed? Also, run offense. I mean, Denver's defense is really good against the run. And if you can't open up the run game, that means it turns into a pass-heavy offense, which we all kind of know if it turns into a pass-heavy offense, the game's probably going to end up being really close, and it's going to come down to one massive decision, coaching decision, turnover or something at the end of this game. So it's experience against inexperience, but really it's kind of experience versus experience.
No, you said it. I mean, especially the experienced against experience. Sean Payton on that other side, that man has won a Super Bowl. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, and just to touch on the Broncos D-line, shout out to Nick Bonito. He has been absolutely balling this year for the Broncos, making plays all over the field. He has a freaking pick six, multiple sacks. John Franklin Myers and Zach Allen have been very good as well, which leads into our next point. Speaking of kind of matchups, who is your X factor for the Bills this game? With mine, you guys might like. I've been critical of them on the timeline and in the group chat, but I think in order for the Bills to go on a big run, we're gonna need Dalton Kincaid to be what he was drafted to be, especially when Denver has good corners, with obviously the best cornerback in football. So no matter what, we expect one side of the field to be completely shut down, from Patrick Surtain. So it's going to be up to the rest of the Bills' weapons, but specifically Dalton Kincaid. I believe he had a touchdown in last year's matchup against Denver. I'm almost 100% positive. In fact, I think he did. So he's going to possibly need to get on the scoreboard. He's going to have to make some big catches, which we know he's capable of. He just hasn't necessarily done it this season. What about you guys for your X factors?
Want me to go, or you want to go, Connor?
You got this one, Paul, for right now. I got to think.
All right. I'm kind of going to go back to Connor's point where when he was talking about screen passes, who we normally like to use in screen passes? Ty Johnson. I mean, he was important against that in the last year's game against Pittsburgh in the wild card round. I mean, you can also go back to the Jets game to end the season last year. Big games where that defensive line is really good at the opposite side. Ty Johnson is that perfect gadget guy where you can start opening up your pass game if it's not working. I think there's going to be a certain point in time in this game, whether it's early on in the first quarter or most of the first half, where like we're going to be sitting here is like, why can't the Bills move the football down the field? It's, well, maybe we all know that the Bills wide receivers struggle with getting separation. So how do you kind of open that up just a little bit is using Ty Johnson. I think he's going to have an important impact probably in the first half of this game. When the game starts to open up a little bit, you will start probably seeing the Bills' offensive weapons, normal names of Cook, Shakir, Kincaid, possibly at some points, be the important pieces for the rest of the game. But at the beginning portion of this game, I think Ty Johnson is going to have an important role to open up the Bills' offense just a little bit.
All right. Yeah, I like it. I absolutely like it. Thank you for actually giving me credit for an idea for once. Paul, you know what I'm talking about. But if you want my one to watch, almost like a very underrated or someone to keep an eye on, something in general to keep an eye on will be takeaways regarding this team. It's a rookie quarterback. We need to force him into mistakes. We need to force him into coughing the ball up or throwing very awful interceptions. Too many people keep pinging me every time a certain player on this team has a bad game. Well, what if I told you that it right over there, he's going to have a good game and he's going to have an interception, at least one, in the first playoff game against the Denver Broncos? It's going to be critical to force Bo Nix into making rookie mistakes. And I think Taron Johnson is going to be that kind of guy that'll just get that interception. You know what? I'll really put it into the universe. Let's just say the Broncos hypothetically are they're in the red zone, maybe 15-yard line, 1st and 10, looking to try to get into the end zone. Bo Nix throws a short pass just a little too low. Taron Johnson gets a hold of it and runs it all the way back for a pick six. Can you imagine how nuts Highmark Stadium is going to go when that happens? So I'm just putting that into the universe. We need to be able to force Bo Nix into making plenty of mistakes, but oh man, just to have a little bit of Taron Johnson redemption, if people can even think that there's a need for Taron Johnson redemption. All right. You think that there's a need for redemption for a player that doesn't really need redemption? Well, how's this for you? Takeaways, big one. Rookie quarterback. Make him get rid of that ball and get it right back.
Taron Johnson, yes. The pick 6 against the Ravens.
Yep.
Divisional round that helped the Bills go to the AFC Championship.
Yep.
That year was special, man. Special year. Need it again.
Yeah, we do now. But let's go ahead and move on to our next point of discussion. That was,
I believe, our game picks.
Yeah, I was going to say, was that the game pick? Oh, this is a good one right here.
Let's I see how we have the show set up, but because they are coming up this weekend, starting Thursday, let's actually start with college first, because those games are coming up. So let's do our playoff picks for the semifinal.
All right. The one on Thursday is Penn State and Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl. Penn State getting the free pass of probably the easiest way to get to the semifinal. And then there's Notre Dame that had to beat Georgia and Indiana to get to the semifinal. I think Notre Dame is the team that could win it all here. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, as good as Penn State's been playing, like you mentioned, they kind of had an easier road. And, I mean, Boise State just needed a couple less mistakes in that matchup for it to be a completely different ball game. But I just think on paper they didn't have the trenches to compete with Penn State. Now, on the flip side, we saw what Notre Dame was able to do against a Georgia team, which is just bully teams in the SEC for years in the trenches. And we know how James Franklin has done versus top 10 teams in ranked matchups. Yes, he's done better as of late, possibly because they've been playing easier teams in SMU and Boise State. But after watching Marcus Freeman put a clinic up versus Kirby Smart, give me the Irish, because I think that defense can shut down the Penn State offense, and I just can't say I trust Penn State in a big game.
Oh, my. Man, you guys got me there, because all of you know how much I do not like college football when Florida State is really bad. Like, I am the most casual college fan you will ever see, and that's literally because I just watch it for draft prospects for the NFL. That's it. Speak of that one, Ashton Jeanty has declared for the NFL draft. I think that'll be a very interesting. I think he'll be interesting depending on where he lands. But with regards to this game, I am actually going to take Penn State. I think that Notre Dame's little Cinderella run is going to end right here. I know they've had a pretty tough route, but I don't know. I'm feeling the chaos.
You called Notre Dame's run a Cinderella run?
I call it just the fact that they beat Georgia, and that made me really happy to see, because they should not have beaten Georgia, according to literally everybody I know. Then all of a sudden they beat Georgia, and everybody's like, wait, where'd these guys come from? So,
I mean, I wouldn't call Notre Dame's run a Cinderella run after
I wouldn't either.
Beating, even though they lost to Northern Illinois and they won, what is that, 13 straight games since that game.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they given some sort of renewing of life after that game. You know, you hear the stories of Riley Leonard. You know, after that game, he just goes into a very dark place, and then he just, after that game, wins 13 straight games. And this Notre Dame team is, you know, rally around together. It's a really tight-knit group, really good culture in that room. Gives me a feeling that when I'm watching this Notre Dame team, it makes me look at Riley Leonard as a mini Josh Allen. Like, that guy goes out there and he balls out. Like, no moment is big enough, is too big for Riley Leonard. And that makes me feel like that this Notre Dame team can beat anyone right now. Like, beat an Ohio State team who's just torturing people right now. I mean, they slashed Oregon at the Rose Bowl. They gave Tennessee maybe one of their worst losses ever. This Notre Dame team, just from offense to defense, is really good. I'm taking Notre Dame. I feel like I'm going to say it. Notre Dame by a lot.
Oh, by a lot. All right, Booger McFarland. Or was that Booger McFarland that said that?
I think that might be Marcus Spears.
No, it was somebody
he wasn't picking scores. He was just saying by a lot, by a little.
No, it was an actual prediction on Monday Night Football a few years back. I think it was Booger McFarland.
It might be Booger McFarland. By a lot. He did Monday Night Football before. All right, but the game that I think everyone's going to be looking into is Texas and Ohio State.
Oh,
probably
God.
Two of the most picked teams to win the national championship outside of the number one team in the country that got ousted by Ohio State last week. Does Texas stand a chance against this Ohio State team?
I think they stand a chance, but Michigan did not do the rest of the college football world a favor when they beat Ohio State and kind of woke them up. They woke up a sleeping giant. The defense has playmakers throughout between Tyreek Williams, Caleb Downs, and the edge rusher, his name slips my mind, Jack Sawyer. Thank you. Jack Sawyer. They have playmakers on defense, playmakers all over the offense between Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, Judkins, and Henderson. I just think there's too much talent on this Ohio State team. And on the flip side, I think Texas has been playing teams a little too close, and I'm not sure if they can get away with it against Notre Dame. Or, sorry, not Notre Dame, Ohio State. So that's my championship pick, Ohio State versus Notre Dame.
Interesting. Right. Yeah, I have to actually agree with every single point been made, especially after watching Texas play it that close to ASU. Like, you were up 17. You went to overtime. And if I remember correctly, you went to 2 overtimes.
Yeah, went to double overtime.
Like, and you think you could go in there and beat Ohio State, who absolutely clobbered Oregon, like, by 20 points? No way. Ohio State's going to run away with the game.
Texas, even though they're my national championship pick, and they're still standing to this day, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, this Ohio State team.
My freaking national championship pick got completely incinerated by Ohio State. It wasn't even close.
So man. Am I allowed to pick against my national championship pick and just say go for Ohio State here? But there's a part of me that seems that Texas could do it. There's just this part of me that says, even though Texas, they were up big in both of their games and they allowed both teams to kind of sit back and allow them to get back into both of these football games to make it close. But at the end of the day, Texas pulled out. Like, they pulled out against Clemson. They restored and they came through. They had to play double overtime against Arizona State. They made plays when they had to make plays, but I don't know if they're going to make enough plays to beat Ohio State. But I'm going to go Texas just for the sole fact that they're my national championship pick, and I'm not going to go against it.
Well, all right. That is a very unfortunate 2-1 there for you there, Paul. But moving on.
Moving on to Saturday, which is now NFL football instead of college football. It starts with the day of Texans and Chargers in the 4:30 slate on Saturday, a 4 versus 5 down in Houston.
Yeah, give me the Chargers. I mean, the Texans looked very strong, had a promising start to the year, but their offense is just not the same with injuries to Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell. I think the Chargers are peaking at the right time, and I just think they have a better coach.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and that's the exact same reason why I'm taking the Chargers. The Texans are literally the team that wins their division by default this year.
Mhm.
And I don't think they stand a chance with all the injuries they've sustained on offense. The Chargers are going to have their way with them. So I'm taking the Chargers.
Not disagreeing. I'm going Chargers as well. I mean, this
Clean
is not the
sweep.
same Chargers team that had Brandon Staley, and they allowed Trevor Lawrence to make one of the best comebacks ever. This
Nah,
is
it's
a
just
this is a
Chargers.
Harbaugh-led Chargers team, and we all know the Harbaugh effect everywhere he goes. So the Chargers pull away with this one.
And
All right, the
we'll
nightcap
see a
on
vintage Chargering at some point in the playoffs.
could happen if the Steelers beat the Ravens in the nightcap on Amazon Prime on Saturday nights. They have to have this AFC North game in prime time. Do the Ravens get upset in the opening round?
Oh, don't we
I
all wish?
say no. We all are gonna wish, but the Steelers have not won a playoff game since I believe it was 2016. If someone wants to fact check me on that, they are riding a 4-game losing streak going into the playoffs, including a complete collapse on that AFC North lead, where they basically just had to win a couple more of their games down the stretch to win their division, which they did not do. In fact, I don't trust this team, whether it's with Wilson, Fields, you name it. The defense is still going to be solid, but they relied far too much on Chris Boswell to be their entire offense in the regular season, and that's not going to win you playoff games. So give me the Ravens.
Hey, now Chris Boswell for MVP if you think about it like that. But anyway, we won't go into MVP discussion. That's already got too many people riled up in both this fan base and others.
Josh
But
Allen.
it's always Josh Allen. Anyway, I seriously cannot pick the Steelers to win this game. And that's literally because Mike Tomlin's playoff record as of late has been dreadful. He has not won a playoff game since 2016. And the Ravens are going to look to beat their division rival, of course, because why not, right? Why would you not want an opportunity to beat your division rival 3 times in the same season? I'm pretty sure they swept them this year in the regular season, if I remember correctly. So that would then mean that they'd be facing them for a 3rd time. Oh no, the Steelers beat them in week 11, right?
They did
So it'd be
split. Yep.
yeah. So they beat
That
it. The
was the
Steelers
Chris
beat them in week 11.
Boswell. That was the Chris Boswell field goal game. Just
Right, that was the
get in the
field goal
field goal
game.
range and let
All right.
Chris Boswell do the job.
So out here,
That's not happening.
No, it's definitely not. I'm
Yeah,
taking the
you
Ravens.
can't do that in the playoffs. You have to put
Nope.
it in the end zone.
And especially not on the road, not at night against the Baltimore Ravens and that fan base there. It's a home field advantage completely for the Ravens. That offense really runs through Lamar Jackson, but it also runs through Derrick Henry. Zay Flowers not possibly playing on Saturday night might help the Steelers in a way, and kind of like maybe bring up the upset talks a little bit in heading into the weekend if Zay Flowers can't go. But I still think the Ravens have just too much talent across the board, and the Steelers just doesn't have an offense that scares anyone. Give me Baltimore. We have 2 sweeps in a row. That means something has to happen in this Eagles and Packers game.
Well, I've already discussed that one, but we'll continue on with the picks themselves.
That's the next one. Eagles versus Packers.
You say upsets happening here, Connor. In your quick take, at least in my game pick, I'm saying I'll give you 2 different scenarios. If Jalen Hurts cannot indeed go, I'm gonna take the Packers on the upset. But if Jalen Hurts is playing, give me the Eagles. I think they're the more complete team. And I just think between Saquon Barkley, their weapons at receivers, they just have too much for Green Bay. I think Green Bay should stay in the game most of the game, but I think at the end, the Eagles just have a better defense. I think they'll be able to potentially create more turnovers and create more stops, which will lead to them winning this game.
Yep. And I'm actually going to go right along with that one myself, too. If Jalen Hurts is able to play, then I would gladly go ahead and take the Eagles for the game. But if he doesn't, I would definitely continue on my discussion in the quick take with the Packers, it won't be as much of an upset anymore.
So you went Philly, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
I went Philly if I definitely would go Philly if Hurts plays, but if he doesn't play, I would definitely go Packers.
So basically what Ben
Agreed.
said. I'm
Yep.
going to give you guys a firm pick. I'm taking Green Bay in the upset. I think this is 2-7 upset material. It's just, even though Saquon is, through the roof, just having his best season of his career, one of the best seasons by a running back in decades. I mean, then you get, Jalen Hurts situation. Jalen Hurts would be playing the first game in 2 weeks. What does he look like in his first game back in the playoffs by any chance? Like, that's another note, that if he does come back, his first game is in the playoffs in Philly. We all know the sports market there. This is pure upset material. Give me the Packers in this one. Another 4 verse. I think this is 3 verse 6. Buccaneers and Commanders down
Oh boy.
in Tampa. Will the Bucs fire the cannons after this game?
They will. That offense has been rolling too much. I think Washington keeps it close. But I just think at the end, Mike Evans gonna get the upper hand in another epic Marshawn Lattimore versus Mike Evans matchup, which we've gotten a ton of when they're in the NFC South. This is their first matchup outside of the NFC South. But Bucky Irving has been balling. The defense is finally starting to play better. So give me the Bucs.
Yep, I am saying the exact same thing, but I'm also adding a little bit to the pick of the Buccaneers to beat the Commanders, and that's the whole rookie quarterback in the playoffs situation. Because, yeah, we talked about it earlier with Bo Nix, but Jaden Daniels is in the same exact situation, and in my opinion, has a lot less of a caliber of a head coach to kind of help guide him through that. So I think that if you're going to see a rookie quarterback, have an epic choke in the playoffs, it will be more so Jaden Daniels than it'll be Bo Nix. So I am absolutely going to go ahead and take the Buccaneers to win the game. They'll force Jaden Daniels into making plenty of mistakes. I mean, he's got to learn, and it's about adaptability once it gets to a game like that. So you live and you learn, and I think Jaden Daniels is going to do the learning.
Tampa Bay, they're playing at another level entering this postseason, as you all said. I think this is an interesting matchup as you go between Baker and Daniels, but Daniels is a rookie quarterback up against, a very experienced Buccaneers team. I think the Buccaneers pull a close one against the Commanders. Whose house is it going to be in LA on Monday night? Rams' house or Vikings' house?
Rams house. You got to give as much credit as can be to Sam Darnold and O'Connell on the great job. They were just one game away from being the number 1 seed. And unfortunately, even after winning 14 games this season, they will have to travel to Los Angeles to play a Rams team that outside of their week 18 matchup where they didn't really have much to play for in the rest of their starters, they won 9 of their previous 11 after starting off the season 1-4, which obviously was because of some injury issues. But we obviously saw them in LA, which was the Bills' most recent loss. The defense has been playing much better. They have weapons all over the place. And my angle for this game is O'Connell comes from the McVay tree. So you obviously know that McVay should have the upper hand in that coaching matchup. And the way to beat the Vikings is get pressure on Sam Darnold. I think the Rams have the front in order to do that between Jared Verse, Braden Fisk, Byron Young, Kobe Turner. Their secondary has been playing better as of late. I think this is just a tough matchup for Minnesota after losing that game to Detroit. I think the Rams are just the hotter team right now, and I trust them with their playoff experience more between Stafford and McVay to get the job done.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, it is 100% Rams house. They are going to end the Vikings run. And it's not to say that the Vikings are a bad team. They're really not. But after what we saw on Sunday night against the Lions, I'm not confident in a team like that to go out and win a game against the Rams, who are surging at this point. So I am absolutely taking the Rams on Monday night. And Paul, go ahead. Are you going to make it another clean sweep?
Yeah, we're making it another clean
go.
sweep here. I mean, we're in for ultimate chaos if Jalen Hurts doesn't go. I mean, if Jalen Hurts doesn't go, it would be 5 straight clean sweeps. That means we're in for crazy chaos if that's the case with our track record here. But I mean, all the points said are correct, and I think it's Matthew Stafford and it's Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold just didn't look good last week with the pressure on him against the Lions. And if that's the team they're going with entering the postseason on the road, even though LA isn't, a hostile environment, but you're still going on the road with all that pressure. Yeah, I think the Rams probably win this game comfortably.
Oh yeah, it will absolutely be a very interesting game because you just wonder what the Vikings will be able to do in that situation. But that is all of the game picks. If you think about it,
me and Connor, maybe for the first time ever, we're like completely aligned in all of our picks, at least for the NFL games.
Yeah, for real. I like the idea of that, Ben, because we've generated some
Christmas break. Did we just feel joyful?
I don't know. Perhaps. Maybe I'm just joyful at the Bills being as, this just feeling so different for the Bills. But if hypothetically, if the Steelers managed to pull off an upset against Baltimore and we would get the winner of whoever wins against LA and Houston, that would be a very nice round 2. Let's just be completely honest, but I don't think it's going to happen. At the rate it's going, we're going to probably know who we're going to face by that 1:00 game on Sunday 100%. Before it even starts.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, because we're the last. Saturday. Yep. Correct. Yeah, both like Paul mentioned, both matchups happen before the Bills play. So hopefully next week, we get to preview a Bills home playoff game, whether that's against the Texans or Chargers or the Ravens. Yeah, let's hope that, the Bills take care of business. Maybe the Steelers can take business too for us. But that should wrap up tonight's show. We'll be back next week, same place, same time. And as always, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.